Hi, hello everyone.
Hello, sir. We'll start the session in 2 minutes.
Sure.
So everyone, please keep your videos on and mute yourselves. So good afternoon, everyone. We welcome you all to the second week of the speaker series of Iiminence 3.0. It gives us immense pleasure to all with us for an insightful session. While the first week introduced the theme of Brace Embrace, the second week aims to explore and dig deeper on the changing business environments. Through Eminence, we bring to you an open platform to actively engage with the big mighties from the industry and observe new trends in the human resource space that might change how we function in the coming future. To start the event, we have among us Mr. Ritesh Agarwal. Sir is the Sales Capability COE Head for Asia BU at PepsiCo. He leads the training and development function for 5,000 plus students, sales professionals in both foods and beverages, businesses across 14 plus countries based out of Bangkok, Thailand. Sir is an alumni of Accelerate Jamshedpur, having more than 12 years of experience in the industry and is the author of the management book Sales HR Strategy, a book on the HR strategies for HR and business leaders today. Thank you for joining us, sir. We are more than glad to have you here. We look forward to an informative session. Over to you now.
Thank you. Thank you, Saundarya. A quick sound check. I hope you are able to hear me properly.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Great, great. Let me share my screen. Just confirm to me if you are able to see my screen as well in the full screen mode.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Excellent, excellent. Great. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I am very delighted to be part of this speaker series, Brace or Embrace, on the topic mergers and acquisition for this week 2. It's great to be part of this festival, the HR festival called Iiminence, which is organized by IIM Indore. A quick introduction about myself. While Saundarya has introduced me, I'll quickly like to share that a few years back, I was in a similar situation and in a similar stage of life that you are in today. I actually did my engineering from NIT Nagpur, and then I had an opportunity to join XLRI in their HR management stream. I completed my MBA in 2010, and uh, after that, I joined PepsiCo directly from the campus. And if you see, over the last 12 years, it has been a fantastic journey with PepsiCo. I joined as a management trainee and moved through roles. I'll be talking about these things in the next slide as well. But overall, if you see, the key message which I wanted to share with you is one, I'm just like you guys. Uh, I have gone through the stage which you are going through now. And let me assure you, it's a very exciting stage to be in. Uh, One other thing which I wanted to share was, it's not that when I graduated from the university or from XLRI, I stopped learning. Over the last few years, I had the privilege of going through several global courses like ATD CPLP, which is the American Training and Development Institute. They have a course on performance and learning. So I had gone through that course, as well as I had gone through the SHRM SCP's course. And then through PepsiCo also, I had the opportunity of learning from best institutes, both in India as well as globally. So I had an opportunity of visiting IIM Ahmedabad as part of the leadership development program. And then last year in 2021, I had the opportunity of going through a similar learning program from Harvard's. So my learning journey has not stopped. And that is where, I am very excited to be part of this discussion. I am not looking towards this discussion as a faculty or as a person who is just speaking and sharing slides. I have made the content in such a way that I would encourage all of you to share your thoughts. And I would really, want this session to be looked from a perspective of participation and engagement levels, and not just from the knowledge gain perspective. Quickly moving on, I had a great career with PepsiCo so far, spanning over 12 years. The key message here is, if you get into a good organization after your campus, try to stick with it. Learnings and growth will come if you stick with an organization for quite a number of years. Do not be a fly-by-night operator, right? I had tried to do so, and I think I have every right to give you this small nugget of wisdom. Try to stick with your organization, learn as much as you can in the organization that you join in. Having said it, the journey with PepsiCo has not been easy. It has not been a walk in the park, or a very kind of a stable and very soothing journey. If you see, over the last 12 years, I had the opportunity of going through 7 roles, which in many perspective, a lot of you may not want to do. I know the buzz I had during my campus interviews, that we generally don't want to get our hands dirty as HR professionals. And we would definitely not want to take up roles which would put us in a difficult situation like that of a factory or a plant. And that's where I want to share this thought with you, that don't look at any of the difficult roles as a quick saying a quick no to them. In fact, you should try to do difficult roles early in your career, so that it can shape your thinking, it can give you a nuance of how business works, as well as prepare you for the leadership roles that you want to come in your careers, right? So, these 7 roles, I had 11 relocations, very difficult thing to do, in real life. And these 11 relocations, I had put a question mark there. It's not that 11 relocations, this would end. If I want a long-term career in HR with a great organization, I have to be flexible in terms of my location. And if I have location constraints, I need to manage them properly. If I want growth, I need to relocate. It is as simple as that. And that's where the question mark has come, that I don't think that 11 relocations is going to stop now. It is going to continue as I move ahead in the career. And hence the other learning is, be flexible, be mobile. Don't get attached to a particular relocation. Don't get attached to a particular city location from the career perspective. and try to learn as much as you can through the multiple HR domains. If you see my career graph, I had started as a management trainee. And actually in PepsiCo, when you start as a management trainee, you don't join in HR, you join in sales. So I was the person who was actually shadowing the salesman, sometimes taking orders myself, driving a cycle van, driving a cycle, driving a truck, sometimes, traversing a lot of path on my feet to take orders. I worked as a supervisor after that. I worked as a manager after that. So in sales, I did a lot of stints to understand the bricks and mortars of the business, right? And that didn't come easy, right? My graduation was in HR, right? Still, I was pushed into doing sales. I did not like it initially, but then later I realized there is a bigger plan to the madness I was in, and those stint in sales really helped me appreciate what the organization does and what actually works. And then, I joined the unit. I joined the unit, a sales unit, as the HR manager or the HR head for the sales unit in Chandigarh. That was my fourth stint after the three management trainee stints. And then this stint was a very, very, close to my heart, because I was the first HR manager there. Previously, there was no HR manager in the unit, and that unit faced a lot of attrition. So we had a lot of people moving out of the organization very fast. So my seat was a hot seat, and it always used to keep me on my toes because there was close to 40% attrition in the team. Then I moved to as the factory HR head for a Panipat beverage factory. And this was one of the most challenging roles which I had had. This was a legacy factory, one of the first few factories of PepsiCo in India in 1980s. And it had a lot of legacy issues. And I had spoken about it in my previous forum with Acceleri that, I was the one who was driving the change from 12-hour shift to 8-hour shift in the Panipat factory. And it was very difficult because it had impact on the working hours, it had impact on the salaries of the labor. And it was a very challenging thing. We had faced a lot of trouble from the employees. We had faced protests. We had had contract labor agitation. And it was a real in-depth exposure to industrial relations. And the good part of it was right, during the start of my career, the first 5 years of my career. Then after this stint, I moved as the plant HR head for the Kolkata Foods plant. Kolkata Foods plant is one of the largest factories of PepsiCo in India and in Asia. It is currently having 6 lines. And again, if you see, it was in West Bengal, which is known for a highly unionized environment. Fortunately, as well as unfortunately, this factory was a non-unionized setup. So we had close to 1,500 employees coming in a non-unionized environment. You never knew whom to negotiate, whom to talk to if there is an issue in the factory. You had to practically talk to all 1,500 employees to solve even a simple matter like tea availability in the canteen. So after this, I moved into a India BU role. I was a sales capability head for both foods and beverage division based out of Gurgaon. My role was to train the sales team. There were close to 8,000 employees in India at that point in time for both foods and beverages. After this role at a national level, I got an international opportunity. I moved as the associate director for sales capability for the AMENA sector, supporting the training and development for 44 countries for both foods and beverages operations. And then while this role was a support role to the head of sales capability, after this role, I moved to the sales capability head for the Asia BU based out of Bangkok 3 years back. So if you see, this has been my career journey so far, and it has been practically a lot of movements, a lot of challenging roles, and a lot of places where I had to brace myself and keep my motivation on. Sometimes it was very tough. Some of these roles, I was a North Indian placed in South India for close to a year. I did not know the language. Food habits were very different. Ways of working were very different. I faced a lot of challenge, and it was the very first year of my career. And it was the first year where 50% of my batchmates had already switched their role into a cushy and a meaty office job with a consultancy or with a bank. So, it was very frustrating that I was out in the streets in a horrible weather, very humid thing. And, it was really a time when I had to brace myself. Similarly, the head of HR for a Panipat factory. Panipat was a very violent place. And any changes we wanted to do, it usually led to employees getting beaten up outside the factory. And I also had those near-death experiences. And those were the times where really I had to brace and wait for the right moment to take my career forward. Similarly, my role for 44 countries, it was very challenging. And 44 countries, they have their huge cultural issues. Generally, while people know it is good to do training and development for the team, but for the sales part, taking time out is difficult. And the same curriculum in English cannot be rolled out in multiple countries because each country has its own local language. So, this is what I wanted to share with you, just to give you an indication of what might lie ahead of you when you move out of this comfortable space of your current campus. Great thing is I had huge life-changing experiences. I had those experiences which normally I would not have got. And you can see some of them here. This is me holding the World Cup. This is the actual World Cup trophy, which was World Cup at that point in time in 2010-11 was sponsored by PepsiCo. So this was actual World Cup trophy, which was doing rounds in PepsiCo office just as an employee engagement initiative. This was a management trainee team I had joined in, and this was a truck where, where I had the opportunity of riding through a large part of my time when I was a salesman. This is the famous Meenakshi temple in Madurai. So all the streets leading to the Meenakshi temple was where I had done the entire, sales stint. And these were some of the awards I had got for leading my team: the best factory HR manager, the best sales HR manager, the best sales capability manager in India. All these trophies came, of course, at a price, but they were, time and effort worth spending. And this was me in front of IIM Ahmedabad during the IIM Ahmedabad corporate learning program, which I shared with you earlier. So this is what it is. Before I go forward, any thoughts or anything you want to share, anyone wants to share, or any queries you have with respect to my introduction? Anything you want to share? Yes, Prakhar, no need to raise the hand, just unmute and share your thoughts. You're on mute, Prakhar. Yeah, you want to share anything, Prakhar? I see a chat. Not able to unmute, you can write your question in the chat box and I'll try to answer it if it is an easy question. For the host of this Zoom call, may I request you to provide rights to the team to unmute themselves?
Sir, rights have been given already.
Sorry? Okay, great.
So, sir, my question was, in your first slide, I saw that SHRM was mentioned there. So
Yes.
our program is aligned with SHRM. So I wanted to ask, in the industry, how instrumental is it when it comes to getting a good role?
There is a favorite, there is a very famous and my favorite Mahabharata quote that, your focus should be on doing things in the current state rather than focusing on how it will lead to benefits, right? So my objective of doing the SHRM was to refresh my knowledge about HR systems and processes. And that played a huge role. I'll talk about it in the next slide, how that played a huge role. But then why I did the SHRM was I want to revisit how American corporations work on their HR functions. And of course, SHRM SAP is a very well global recognized course on HR. So that is the reason why I think I did it in 2018 or 17-18. So after 7 years of my career, I re-embarked on the learning. So my focus was to learn as much as I could have. And of course, the greatest thing is SHRM SCP also helps you understand what are the right processes and what are not the right processes. So that was the objective of doing it. Has it helped me professionally? Yes, of course. In my various jobs that I do with PepsiCo, the knowledge helps me a lot.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Good question. Any other thoughts?
So I had one question.
Yeah, Narayan.
So when you said that you had near-death experience during working in that Panipat plant, so
Yeah.
what was it that kept you going? And did you ever thought that you will just leave this labor relations and all, and you'll just switch to corporate HR? Did you ever thought about that?
Very good questions. As a human being, if you go through that kind of an experience where you're attacked or where you had such difficult experiences, these are the thoughts that normally come up, right? So no doubt that these were the thoughts that were currently there. And more than all these thoughts, I was actually concerned about safety of my family. So, these were the genuine thoughts which had come, that what should I do now? Should I continue in my role? Should I ask for a change? Should I look out of PepsiCo? These were absolutely the right thoughts that had come at that point in time. But then what happens is, gradually you realize that, every job has certain amount of risk. And the job of HR is actually dealing with people and their emotions, right? So it was a great learning from, that experience gave me an insight into how people think. So it's very important that as HR, you balance what the organization wants to do as well as the emotions of the people. And I have a slide on this later on from the perspective of M&A as we move ahead. But you are right. I mean, that experience only gave me an understanding, or only gave me a wisdom which otherwise I would not have got. So yes, of course. I mean, that were the thoughts, but then the motivation was to become a better HR professional. The motivation was to become a better human. And you will all go through those tough times where you will have to ask your employees to leave. How do you handle that? How do you handle that with respect? How do you handle that with empathy? How do you unlock other opportunities for your employees? These are the questions that needs to be answered, versus just looking at it as a transactional job that company has asked you to take that action, and you are taking that action. So yes, you are right. Very good question. Yep. I had Abhijit coming in before Nikita. Abhijit, you were trying to ask something.
Not a hurry, sir. Thank you for that. Nikita can go ahead first.
Okay, great.
Yes, sir. So as we have the theme of this year as Brace and Embrace, and we are including the question that how the new labor codes are going to help us. So I would like you to share your thoughts, like when we are starting our career and with all the changes that are coming up with the new labor codes, how it will be helpful for us in the future.
Very good question. See, I think the greatest benefit of it will come for your next generations, where they will not have to read through so much of labor regulations, right? I remember that I had a labor law book which was this thick. So the first change you will see in the lives is people who go through the HR program, they will not have to go through some 30-40 labor regulations, right? So it will condense it to the 4 top the labor codes as they get rolled out, right? But that is just a joke. I mean, see, you will have to go through the learnings as such. See, I'll be honest in saying that don't look at labor laws from theoretical perspective. See, what happens is when you are in an university like this, you have to go through the labor law from a theoretical perspective, that, okay, what are the rules for the canteen? What are the rules for managing disputes? What are the rules for contract labor? Right? In practice, actually, more than the labor law, what gets executed is the legacy of the company or the legacy of the factory that you are working on. And that is where, as a HR professional, you will face a lot of challenge. So the climate around the labor regulations might keep on changing, right? Every hour, every day, when the honorable courts of India, they declare a ruling, or they declare their particular take on a particular case, that becomes a case law, right? So these changes, they will keep on coming as you proceed. As a HR professional in future, what you will need to do is you will need to understand what are the latest regulations, latest case laws, which is applicable to the work that you are doing. And for this, you will need to stay connected to your campus, to the various labor law magazines which are there, and understanding what's happening in and around you. But that will not be the challenging part. That will be the easiest part to do. The challenging part will be, how do you encourage your organization and your leadership to invest and make those changes which are required as per the new regulations? So that is the more challenging part than the knowledge part. So that is what I would say. For me, the good thing has been PepsiCo as an organization and as a leadership consent, we are all focused towards maintaining regulations. So anything which compliance says, we need to follow. And I'll give you a particular example. In our Kolkata Foods factory, there is a rule that the washroom for the facility of washroom should be, I think, 30 meters away from the canteen. So in the Kolkata factory, when it was initially planned, it was not there. For the first 15 years, the washroom was actually in the vicinity of the canteen, and we were not able to adhere this particular rule. What we actually did as a management team was we changed the factory layout, we got approvals, we broke the entire washroom and shifted it to more than 30 meters apart. So these are some of the examples that, which are there, that as a HR practitioner, what you should do, right?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Just a follow-up question, since I'm intrigued a little. When we are doing the changes, it would call out for a lot of backlash. And when we have to bring theory into practice and we are facing the backlash, so how do we deal with that?
See, first thing is, let's understand that our employees and the people we are dealing with, they are smart people. It's not that they are not smart, right? So anything that you want to do, if there is a logic behind it, and if there is a certain, if that is the logical thing to do for the benefit of the team, for the benefit of the company, you should try to, do a lot of awareness around that particular advantage, right? And people around you will appreciate you for driving the right things. See, in campus also, you can immediately make out who is trying to do the right thing and who is not trying to do the right thing. Similarly, in your professional life, people around you, they will get to understand the way you are dealing with certain issues. They will get to know that the intention behind what you are trying to do is right, and it is for the sustainability of the organization, it is sustainability of your people. So if you are trying to do the right things, you might face barriers because people are resistant to change. That is something which you will need to deal with, but you will not face a certain kind of a challenge in, a fierce challenge when you are trying to do the right thing. So that is what it is, and that is what I try to do when I am faced into these difficulties. I try to bring in that picture. Okay, tell me, what is the right thing to do for the business? What is the right thing to do for the people? And when you ask these questions, people understand that yes, what you're trying to do is the right step forward. Great, good question, Nikita. Quickly moving to Anushka, and this will be my last questions, considering the time. Yeah, Anushka, over to you.
Hello, sir. So you said that you headed the team for 44 different countries, and today diversity and inclusion is really a big thing. So how would you suggest us, like as an HR professional, how do we really deal with this and minimize our biases?
First thing you will need to think is you yourself need to be flexible in your approach, right? Sometimes as HR professionals, the easiest thing to shoot down a question from an employee is saying, see, this is company policy, what can I do? Right. So this is the general statement which HR people give. And I also used to give during the initial careers as the head of HR for the sales unit and in the factory. I used to clearly say, oh, this is a policy of the company, you cannot do anything. This is what the legacy is and you cannot do anything. Right. So see, these are not the answers which the employee look for. Right. And hence, first change is not outside. The first change is in here. So as HR professional, you need to be flexible, right? And flexibility doesn't mean that giving up your thoughts on what is the right thing to do. Flexibility means that you are open to discussions, you are open to thoughts, you are open to listening, right? And this is where the first step is. And then, of course, see, you are not God, right? You are a human being who is prone to make mistakes. And the more number of mistakes you do, the key thing is what learnings you have got from your mistakes and how you can not repeat those mistakes in future, right? So that is where is the key thing. And agility in terms of learning is something I will talk about because that is my current role. And I have related it to the mergers and acquisition thing in my next few slides. So this is what I would strongly recommend. Be open to learning as and when you move ahead. Right?
Thank you, sir.
Great. So let me pause the question and answer session here in paucity of time. I'll come back to it as we move ahead. Let me quickly share a few nuggets about my book. And this is where the concept of the SHRM and all the learnings have come through. I really love writing. And I had been thinking of writing a book about my experiences for quite a long time. And then I got an opportunity in 2022 lockdown. I had some spare time. And I used those spare time to pen down my experiences in form of this book, which is called Sales HR Strategy. It is widely available on Amazon and Flipkart, both in the hard copy as well as the Kindle version. My purpose of writing this book was to actually share with the HR professionals and the management students like you on what could be the practical aspects of managing HR. Unfortunately, when I started my career as the HR head for a sales unit, I did not find any reference material on that. I had all theoretical books, all the OB books, everything was there, but nothing helped me understand that if it is high attrition, what should I do? If I need to hire 40 people quickly, what should I do? What should I do to future-proof HR systems and processes? And that's where my book comes into this picture. If you get time to read about it, go through this book. You will get to understand what are the key aspects in designing the right HR processes, what all aspects you should consider when you become HR manager in future. How should you drive the business in an empathetic manner, and especially keeping people at the center. So my book is definitely one of the things which you can refer to in future, more from a learning perspective, from a practitioner's point of view. Moving ahead, so today's agenda in the next half an hour, right? Saundarya, I think 1 hour is the session time, or it can be extended to 1.5 hours.
So it can be extended.
Okay, I will try to minimize the theory part of it, and I'll try to focus more on the question and answers part of it, if at all we need to extend it beyond 1 hour. But there are two key things which I was briefed on to prepare for the session. One is what have been my practical learnings as far as M&A is concerned, and what all did I do to brace and embrace the experiences or the situations I was in. And then there was a case study which was provided to you, and I hope that all of you would have gone through that case study. If not, what I have done is I have kept it a very general approach which you can apply to any analysis of any future case studies. So I'll talk more about it. But then the key theme which I want to adhere is the theme of this HR Festival Iiminence, which is about bracing and embracing, right? And one of the materials which was shared with me, it talked about bracing and embracing in these particular words, that bracing is basically ducking for cover. I mean, sometimes you are in tough situation. So how do you brace for cover? Holding your ground is also sometimes standing true to what you believe in and waiting for things to blow over so that someday we can go back to the way things were. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen in real life. Things keep on moving forward, and yes, in certain aspects like a pandemic, we do hope that we come back to normal, but normal would not be the old normal. Normal would be the new normal. So that's where the concept of brace comes in. And embracing is basically the happy times where you meet the changes head on, you feel comfortable, confident in understanding the cause, predicting the future, predicting the effect of whatever initiatives you are taking, predicting the effect of whatever initiatives are happening around you, and stepping into the unknown in the hopes of getting an extra edge over the competition. This is where the sense of adventure comes in. And, this is the entire concept of embracing. And to be honest, I had the opportunity of going through these phases, sometimes in sequence, sometimes out of sequence. And I'll be sharing more of it as I go ahead. But let me be honest in sharing that I have not touched on the theoretical aspects of M&A, which I believe you will already learn when you are going through these courses in your campus or going through certain case studies and projects as part of your MBA. So I have not touched on the various frameworks or the SWOT analysis or the financial analysis, people analysis, but I have not touched on that because that is something you will learn. My focus is to share my experiences about the situations I have gone through, and therefore I want to make this declaration absolutely in the beginning that whatever I'm sharing is absolutely not confidential to my company. If you go through the Google search on what I'm speaking about, you will find the references and the situation very readily available on Google. So all the news and the media have talked about those things. So I'm not sharing anything which is confidential to the organization I am working with. I would rather be focusing on the two transition experiences I had gone through by being part of the HR team. I was not leading those transitions, but I was part of it. And I had the opportunity of making mistakes. I had the opportunity of learning from those mistakes. Is my whatever I am saying, is it right or wrong, good or bad? I would recommend you not to look at from this lens. It was my experience. It could be good, bad, ugly. It could be fantastic, but nevertheless, it only shows the learnings I have gone through, and that's where my focus has been, to share the learnings and the key challenges I had gone through, so that you can learn from my experiences, right? And that's where I will repeat by saying, please share your thoughts. I'll give you enough and more opportunity to share your thoughts about what I have gone through. But in case you are not able to understand anything which I'm talking about, please feel free to pause, unmute, and share your thoughts or ask me questions. If those are easy questions, I will try to answer them. If those are tough questions, give me some time to come back. Great. So I will start by actually asking you a tough question. So what do you think is the main reason behind mergers and acquisitions, right? You would have read about it. You would have gone through the news articles. You would have heard about the famous acquisition, which we are hearing about it both in the social media as well as the news. So feel free to unmute and share one or two words, sharing the reasons. What could be the reasons behind the M&A? Yes, Abhijit, I see a raised hand.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for your insights. I believe that the basic idea, the overall idea behind going for a merger and acquisition between different companies or organizations, is to share responsibility, and come up with a more stronger strategy. As we know, there is strength in unity. So that is the foundation level of all this concept, that if multiple organization companies who perform multiple domains, they can come together, they'll be able to share responsibilities, add to each other value, act as a helping hand. They can increase the total shareholder in the market, and that's how they want to grow and go ahead.
Excellent point. Absolutely excellent points. We move to Narayan.
So I think the main aim is to gain competitive advantage.
Great point. Competitive advantage. Yes. Surbhi.
It is to diversify their products and to gain market share, and of course to survive, have an advantage over competition.
Yeah. Survival survival of the fittest is the global rule, right? Prakhar.
So adding on to all of these points, actually it depends on the strategic logic of the company, what they're actually trying to achieve. They're looking for competitive growth. Maybe they'll look for diversification of products. Maybe they're trying to venture into new markets. There can be multiple reasons.
It can be because of multiple reasons, absolutely, and depends on what are the ambitions of the current company and what are the ambitions of the people in that company. Great point. Any other thoughts? I see generally, a lot of you are, only a few people of you are sharing your thoughts. We have 60 people in this chat. I would actually want all of you to share your thoughts. Feel free to unmute and share. There is nothing right and wrong. Just share your thoughts. But don't repeat the points which have already been told. Try to add those points which have not been said, so that all of us can benefit from each other's discussion. Last 2-3 thoughts. I see something chat. Okay, Nikita has shared growth, profit, survival. Good point. Any other thoughts, any other points which have been left out? You can unmute and share, or you can write in the chat box. Any other thoughts? What are the increasing the market share and bargaining power? Yes, of course. Bargaining power is basically related to the margins or the profitability of the company. So great point, Manmeet, good point. Okay, so Riddhi had shared that point. Manmeet is sharing economies of scale. Yes, absolutely. Economies of scale is something which is very important. How do you do vertical integration? And our case study talks about the vertical integration. Diversification, yes. Acquiring assets, including people and their competencies. Great point, Shruti. I'll talk about it more in the next slide. Very good point. Any other thoughts? Okay, great. So I will actually like to, share a research by, which was done. What are the reasons behind mergers and acquisition? Some of this you have already spoken about: eliminating competition, establishing a bigger market share, creating a strong brand, right? Brand sells, right? Reducing tax liabilities, the financial aspects of it, right? So if one entity is making loss and the other entity is making a profit, if they are two separate entities, then the first entity will, the second entity who is making the profit will have to pay taxes. But suppose you merge both entities, then the loss of the first company will get squared off with the profit of the second company, and the amount of taxes that you will end up paying will be little lesser. And of course, there are various intricacies behind it. There are various laws in the various countries behind it. It is not an easy thing, and this would require a lot of due diligence. But yes, at the top level, reducing tax liabilities is one of the factors which leads to mergers and acquisitions as well. Setting of the losses of this I have already spoken about, right? So this is what basic research says. But then core of it, what Shruti was saying, this is my belief as well. And because I am leading this vertical with PepsiCo, I think the core reason behind M&A is to improve the capability and the core competency of the existing company. So by acquiring or by merging with other entities, you can either build on new competencies or build on the core competencies. You can supplement your existing competency. You can unlock potential, and you can build in the new capabilities as we are talking, right? And look at mergers and acquisition more from a perspective of a person, right? So if you want to really build your muscles, you will go to the gym, you will work out, you will eat the right food, and that's how you build your capability of probably picking up more load at the gym or making your body stronger. Similarly, for if organizations are persons, the way they can become better is by working out, is by collaborating with other people in the same domain or the different domains. So look at organizations as people, and you will understand why mergers and acquisition happens. And one other way to look at mergers and acquisition is also in the form of marriage or divorce, right? So that is another way of looking at it, and not looking at it from an emotional perspective, but looking at it more from a perspective of it has a huge impact on the people around it. It's not only the parties involved, but the entire environment gets affected because of either marriages or divorces. And of course, it has the emotional value in it as well, right? So these are some of the thoughts which I have. Let me quickly move to the quotation which your professors would be talking about. I mean, there's a famous quote that 80 to 90% of mergers and acquisition bids or the deals, they fail within the first 3 years. Why do you think M&As fail? Quickly, over to you guys. Speak about it, speak about 1 or 2 words, and then we quickly move to the next person. Yes, please feel free to unmute and share.
Because the cultures of the companies do not match.
Great point. This is a classical point which any HR student or HR professional says, but it is not the only part of it. Yes, it is the biggest part of it, but not the only part of it. Good point. Abhijit, please feel free to unmute and share.
Sometimes it may be the social and cultural environmental factors also.
Excellent.
Like the merger and acquisition was a good one, but suddenly the government changed or the social perception changed, or maybe the image of the company it simply just appears for sometimes. This can be
I'm anticipating a question in this aspect as we go ahead, but I'll wait for any of you to ask that particular question. I'll come to it. But great point. Great point.
Thank you, sir.
Any other thoughts? We have 61 people now. I would recommend people who have not spoken to unmute and share their thoughts. I see some responses coming in the chat also. Due diligence isn't done thoroughly or not paid enough heed to. Excellent point. I'll talk more about it, but Prakhar, you are absolutely right. Sometimes we do M&As because we want to do something big, because we want to have it as a CV point, because ambitious CEOs have something to show to the shareholders and to the media. But due diligence is not done properly. Excellent point, Prabha. We will talk more about it. It is not the initial process which matters, right? What actually also matters is the post-transition initiatives. So proper integration strategies are not there, then it will take a toll, right? And there are operational issues and not being able to derive any synergistic value. Excellent point, Shweta. I mean, we will talk about some examples in our case study also, and I hope you ask questions on what's happening in reality in terms of mergers and acquisition through some examples, real life examples. Great point. Any other thoughts? Anyone wants to unmute and share before I share my thought? Integration issues with management and employees. Yes, of course. Conflict in management styles and understanding leading to problems. Yes, our case study also has a character talking about this particular point. We'll talk about it as we proceed. Overestimating synergies. Yes, we had spoken about it, Malika. Great points. Any other thoughts? Oh, okay, last point, inaccurate valuation of acquisition, which is also related to due diligence. Good point, Shweta. Great. So see, research and theory has both internal and external factors. And there was a study done by Deloitte in 2019. So if you see, there are external factors why the M&A by corporates, as well as M&A by private equity, right? We all have heard about how the funding game is on at this point in time, right? And some of my friends are big time into the private equity domain. So there are external factors, economic factors, market or sector factors, changing regulatory and legislative environment. We spoke about it initially. We have internal factors, sales did not materialize, execution, talent issues, not achieving expected cost synergies. There was a comment in the chat box. Not achieving expected revenue, faulty due diligence, we spoke about it, not a well-defined M&A strategy, not achieving cultural alignment. And this is where I was saying, if you see HR professionals, they focus a lot on this part, but the percentage contribution is lowest, right? Economic factors are the highest in terms of external. And if you see, there is a close contribution amongst the highest factors with respect to the top line and the bottom line and the execution gaps, right? So in order to summarize, see, let me share my perspective on this. See, I feel people are the center of everything, right? The building blocks of any organization is not the product, not the culture, not the strategy. The building block of any organization at the end of the day, or the heart of any organization is the people. And that's where, I will like to share some of my practical thoughts around why M&As fail. And there are lingering HR aspects which are there. And there are too many end goals, right? People want to achieve everything. Like in our current case study also, people want to downsize, they want to have higher operational excellence, and they want to list also, because listing the pharmaceutical company would give them better valuations. So if you see, there are too many end goals, and there is a lack of clarity, lack of due diligence which is done. And the other thing is, there is also an alignment to core competence, right? At the end of the day, there is a word called focus, right? And that focus has to be there. While our ambition could be to become a conglomerate, or ambition is to venture into those areas which are growing, but we also need to stay true to our core competence. The key thing about core competence is, if you want to have standard system process and the standard way of driving things, you cannot just make one size fits all, right? You cannot have, the way of working or the HR strategy for a consulting organization equally matching with a FMCG organization, because the way you manage consulting organization, the way you service your customers is very different than the way you service your customers in an FMCG. So if you are having ambitions of having a consultancy HR consultancy organization, as well as have a FMCG organization, and then you think that I need to have standard system process because that leads to efficiency, that is not the right approach. There are a few other thoughts which I have gone through. Basis my personal experiences, I think retention of key talent is a big challenge. If the heart of everything is people, then if you are not able to retain the key talent, then your heart stops, right? So, and then what happens is, building capability of people who are not core to your team really takes a lot of time. It's not that someone new to the organization, when he or she joins, they know the exact way and system of the company right from the day of the joining. Capability building takes time. So retention of key talent always is a big challenge. And I'll talk more about it in my next slide when I discuss from an employee perspective. Then persistent misses in execution and customer satisfaction. See, at the end of the day, revenue is what matters. If customers, they see a change in the internal ways of working, they don't have a lot of confidence in the merger and acquisition which was done, then that would lead to the motivation level of the talent, investment in capability and culture. And all these three internal things will lead to an impact on the customer satisfaction. We have had various examples in our history when we have seen that a lot of very good organizations have failed because the execution or the customer satisfaction decreased after M&A. Now, quickly, let me share with you a personal example in the industry I am in. I'm in the beverage industry. And if you see in the beverage organizations, right, and I'm not talking about specific company, but in the beverage organization globally, if you see, the core is to make, sell, and deliver, right? So you have a concentrate. You will want that concentrate to turn into individual bottles. And then you will try to sell those bottles and deliver those bottles to the last mile, right? So that the consumer, there is a difference between the customer and the consumer. Customer is who actually buys your product, that like the retail stores, the modern trade stores, and consumers are actually the consumers who consume your product, right? So consumers, in FMCG industry, especially in beverage, generally you will not be able to service the consumer directly. Although the models are changing with rapid growth of e-commerce, the channel, the GTM channel of servicing directly to the consumers are coming in, but mostly a large part of volume and the value is realized by serving to the customer. So make, sell, deliver is the core operating model for many beverage organization and many FMCG organization. In this, you see, for beverage organization, we have separate models. Like we have a company-owned model in which our employees, the company employees only will make, they will sell, and they will deliver. So the entire value chain is managed by your company employee itself. So that is the company-owned model. The franchise model, you would have heard a lot about it, especially in the fast-moving consumer goods industry, as well as the quick service restaurants industry, wherein you have a brand, example, McDonald's or KFC or Pizza Hut, and then you find local businessmen who are ready to invest in your company and become our franchisee partners. So similarly, in the beverage organizations, we look at scale franchisee partners who are able to have synergies with us and who are able to make, sell, and deliver, or just sell and deliver, or deliver. So at various stages, you can have franchise partners doing various things. Then there are various joint ventures that we have. You would have already heard about it. Just to give you a perspective, in the FMCG industry, Unilever has tie-up with PepsiCo for Lipton as a JV. We have a lot of other JVs with other organizations like Suntory, Asahi, Carlsberg, and many other companies. And then there could be a global market development program. You have one factory which is in a particular geographic location. The capacity of the factory is very good. So you are able to sell those products into some other geography. So realizing the scale is what it is. Now, there is a reason why I'm talking about the operating models. And once you realize this operating model, you will get to understand that actually the industry where I am working in, mergers and acquisitions are part of daily life, right? All these are nothing but a form of, mergers and acquisitions itself, right? We have a system in which company owned goes to franchise and franchisee owned gets converted into company owned. Similarly, we have systems in which company owned can be moved into a joint venture. So we undergo mergers and acquisition quite regularly, and it is how FMCG organizations work. My personal experience, I have gone through 2 projects on divestments. One was in 2013-14 and second was in 2017-18. You can go through the news and you will get to know there was a divestment project on specific product portfolio where we had divested the juice portfolio to one of the franchise partners. Then COBO to FOBO is COBO stands for company-owned bottling operations. FOBO stands for franchise-owned bottling operations. So these are the transitions which I have gone through. And if you see, because the operating model of any beverage organization, there is a certain global strategy behind it. And all the divestments, they happen because there is a global strategy behind that, right? So what have been my personal experiences and, some of the analysis behind those personal experiences. So there is an organization aspect. Like I mentioned, we need to align to the global model. FMCG organization generally has a franchisee model in many parts of the businesses and many companies. So that's one of the things. The other important thing is the confidentiality. When you are actually undergoing the process of merger and acquisition, as a HR practitioner, I realized that generally organizations are porous. What happens is if you want to do a merger and acquisition activity, you as an HR or or your employee in the organization, they start receiving a lot of requests for sharing data. Some of those data are not the normal course of data that you share with. So employees, they are generally smart, right? We should always have respect for our employees. We should see the way the intellectual capabilities and the understanding capabilities that we are having is the same which the larger organization shares. So we should not think that the employees, they don't know what's happening. Absolutely, we should have that respect for our employees, and we should know that they also know whatever you know, right? And that's where, I feel that some of the key things is having empathy and fairness as an HR team, as a HR practitioner helps from an organization perspective, and avoiding talent differentiation, someone who is good or bad, someone who would stay with you, who would go to the franchise organization or the divestment organization is something which is a very tough job. Sometimes you will have to do it as part of your M&A strategy. Sometimes you should avoid doing it. Most important thing as a HR practitioner is to be agile. You should ensure thorough pre-work, due diligence is what we were talking about. And your speed of response has to be very good to ensure smooth transition. From an employee aspect, right, if you look at it, what I have learned is there is a high uncertainty in the minds of employees. There is a huge concern about job continuity, and that is where, from an employee perspective, M&A is dreaded, right? It is actually living on the edge, right? So how do you balance? If you don't balance, you know what lies in front of you, right? Employee morale, it takes a huge hit, right? Someone whom you are working with for last 10 years, if due to a M&A activity, if he or she is promoted or asked to go, or there is a certain impact on the employment of the person, of your colleague, you also get impacted. And that's where employee morale, it has a huge ups and downs during the M&A phase. Association of the brand, sometimes there is a huge feeling of loss. And, I had those situations where actually doing a M&A, if it impacts an employee, it actually is equivalent to someone losing very close to you, right? It is a near-death experience which you go through. And that's where, staying empathetic and being fair to the employee is something which should be the core. Impact on compensation. See, bills need to be paid. As a HR practitioner, you also need to pay your own bills. Similarly, all other employees, they need to pay. Whenever you are doing M&A, you need to keep into aspect the compensation aspect as well, right? And when you are talking about compensation, there is a famous joke behind the froth and the beer, right? Right. So CTC versus the cash in hand, right? So this was the cash in hand, and this total is the CTC. So sometimes when you are giving offer or you're getting your own offer, you understand what is the froth and what is the actual cash in hand. So at the end of the day, cash matters. As a HR professional, think about it. Think from the perspective of what is the impact on cash in hand for an employee after taxes. That is what is the most critical thing you should look at it whenever you are doing a M&A exercise from a compensation perspective. And then career growth also. If people are ambitious around you, and if you are not able to show them the runway of growth, then why should they stick with you, right? So that's the most important thing, right? During an M&A, what happens is people lose visibility of what lies in front of them in terms of career growth. And that's where the challenge comes in. As a HR practitioner, it's important to identify what could be the future growth opportunities and be transparent about it. So overall, to summarize, basis my personal experience as a HR practitioner, balancing organization priority and balancing employee concerns, this is something which is a very, very tough job. And sometimes you also don't know what are the right answers to it. The only thing you can do is to remain agile, to remain open to learning. And that's where I wanted to share this experience and personal nugget with you. You may not find all this experience as part of your theoretical book, but when you start on your journey, and if you are part of M&A activity, all these points will prove to be beneficial to you if you revisit them in future. Moving ahead, couple of more slides. What have been my key learnings? Please be transparent as you can, right? If you are not transparent, the problem is the employees, when they talk to you, they can make out. Just like when you talk to people, you can make out who is talking honestly and who is not talking honestly. So being transparent is the key, right? If you are transparent, people will trust you. Even if you are taking tough decisions, they will understand that you are taking decisions because that's the right thing to do. And that's where, being transparent and being honest to yourself first and being honest to your team is very important. Being empathetic, right? Sometimes M&A is like cutting your own arm, right? And there have been various real life examples where people got stuck during a hiking exercise and they had to cut their own arm or cut their own, limb to get out of that situation, right? So it's sometimes M&A is like that. Sometimes M&A is like a divorce where the emotions run very high. So ensuring smooth and continuous communication is something very important. You need to be available to your team, right? You need to ensure that you are there, rightly available just at the one phone call. You are there in the office. Your presence has to be felt. And that's where ground presence needs to be the key. But also it has to be in terms of the safety and security of yourself and your team. If emotions are running high, anything can happen. So you need to understand and do your pre-work when you are trying to handle such situations. Managing environment is the key. A guideline which is there to all of us is we are not supposed to interact with the media. The media interaction has to go through a right channel, through our team who is trained and who has the right to talk to media. Social media, right? A lot of us feel free to share our happiness as well as our frustration on social media. How do you manage your environment as a HR practitioner? How do you take care of the legal aspects? And I'll talk more about it in the next slide. There are stock exchange rules. If you are joining a company which is listed either in India or in NASDAQ or in FTSE, you need to be aware that your company needs to adhere to those norms of handling investors. And this is a point which I had told. You can be part of the merger and acquisition activity for 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. But what will not only matter is your initial preparation or the phase that you go through. What will also matter is how do you handle the post transitions and how do you stay in touch at a personal level to the employees whom you had worked, right? So these are the challenges which I had gone through, and some of them had taken a lot of toll on my mental well-being as well as physical well-being, right? I had actually spent a lot of time building an organization, hiring, onboarding, promoting people. And suddenly during the divestment, I had a challenge on my personal credibility when I had to deal with those employees whom we had to transition to a new organization, or we had to ask them to go, or we had to kind of tell them that we cannot promote them because an M&A activity is on and we can do that only after a certain point in time. Personal relationships also suffer. A lot of your colleagues, a lot of the batchmates that you are having will end up as colleagues as you go ahead, right? And these were some of my challenges I had gone through. Safety, physical safety of yourself and physical safety of people around you, physical safety of the assets of the company is something which is paramount. How do you handle that? How do you prepare yourself for that? And then also there are some manager challenges, right? One thing which I would want all of you to work on is how do you manage your manager? Read about it, learn from it, because the first challenge that is going to hit you when you start the corporate life is handling your boss, right? And some of the roles will be easy because you have a good understanding boss. Some of the roles will be difficult because you have a difficult boss. And hence, some of these challenges I had to face when I was part of the M&A activities. Work aspect is, of course, confidentiality, right? Not everything is known to everyone. You also don't know many things. There are things which you know, but you cannot readily share because they're confidential in nature. And you have to balance being between transparent as well as confidential and maintaining confidentiality of information. Acquiring full knowledge will remain a challenge because you will not know. There are a lot of moving parts. You don't know. Something which is a truth today can change tomorrow, right? Troubleshooting and ensuring your availability, hyper-connected workforce, right? Our team is smart. They are connected to each other through social media, through phone calls. Some of them might also be related. So how do you manage the social media? The unionization aspect in factories is something which is a key challenge which I had faced. And then how do you manage external media, police, legal institutions, stock exchanges? These are some of the challenges which I had faced. Ultimately, it boils down to balancing between your heart and mind at a very personal level. These are times which are not easy. These are times which actually makes you think what you need to do to handle difficult people issues. And that's what, these are the things which you will face when you get into the M&A activities. Great. So I moved to the end of part. I am 4 minutes ahead of that 1 hour deadline, which I had. And there is a simple case study which was given. I will talk more about it, but as promised, I like to spend the next 10 minutes to interact with you to know more about your thoughts. If you have any thoughts around the experiences I have gone through or the learnings I had, please feel free to unmute and share or ask questions, or maybe say that, these are very easy things. There could be more difficult things, of course, right? So over to you now. Any thoughts? You can unmute and share. You can use the chat box. I see we have 60 participants.
So you had mentioned that there's a personal touch which is required after the merger with the employees. But in an organization where there are so many employees that for someone like you who's handling at the top level, I mean, how was the experience for you? I mean, how did you manage it?
Yeah, great point. See, thankfully in HR, we already had a construct in which as HR managers, we are supposed to get in touch with all employees every quarter, right? So for the sales team, what I used to do was I used to regularly travel, and I used to have a connect sheet with me, a connect schedule with me, wherein I was supposed to work with that employee on the ground for a certain number of hours, or meet those employees and do one-on-one meetings with them. So every quarter, I had a team of around 100, 120 sales executives. And every quarter, I was supposed to touch base with them either through a phone call or visiting them. Or similarly, in factories, we used to have regular factory visit, regular shop floor visit every day, right? So for me, maintaining connect with the employees was not the difficult part. The difficult part happens afterwards, when suppose there are a set of employees or set of people whom you know, and they are no longer part of the parent organization. They are part of some other organization or part of a subsidiary or part of a franchise organization. How do you maintain connect with them? How do you help them troubleshoot? You cannot troubleshoot with them because now they are part of a different HR policy, a different, business. But what do you do, right? And that is where the challenge comes in. Remember, a true HR professional is not someone who drives transaction or policies. A true HR professional is someone who can connect with people heart to heart, and who respects the people just like you respect yourself. And hence, connecting with people, understanding their life story, understanding their ambitions, helping them unlock their ambition is something which you can do in this profession and you cannot do in any other profession. So it's a tough part, but you need to build that time around you, build system processes, build that effort wherein you are able to connect with larger employees. Some of this will be formal through town halls. Some of them has to be informal through personal connects.
Thank you, sir.
Good
That's
question.
a great point.
Good question. Any more thoughts from anyone?
Excuse me,
Good
sir.
afternoon.
Okay,
Yeah,
Grace, may go
please
ahead.
go ahead. Okay. Hello, sir. My name is Grace, and so we talked about career growth. We talked about employee retention, and also you have stated that in order to attain growth in career, any employee is advised to stay with any organization for a considerable amount of time. But if we see the current scenario, a lot of employees are looking for they really want to climb up the ladder at a rapid pace. So this can be a challenging situation in terms of employee retention. Have you ever experienced any such challenges? And if that's the case, how can we handle these situations?
Very, very good question, Grace. See, we are into an environment which is rapidly changing the norms for lifetime employment, right? Previously, in the generation previous to me, right, my fathers and grandfathers, there was a concept of lifetime employment. So you join a government public sector organization or a private sector organization, and if that organization is good, you spend the 30 years, 35 years of your career with that organization. Now that thought has been changing, right? And that thought has been changing because of availability of various, opportunities to learn, right? See, this is where as an employee, when you are facing the situation, you will need to make that fine judgment. The reason for transition should not only be money. right? And I am telling you this because I have gone through the same experiences just like you. I was part of a great campus where there were astronomical salaries being offered right from the campus itself. All of us, we want to peck those companies at number one who pays the highest, right? Whoever pays the most, WPM. And you know, that's where we start. But then that's not what it is, right? In your career, even if you shift one job to the other job because of high salary, within first 3 months or six months in your new role, you might start getting offers from other companies who will pay you even more. And that is where all these valuation games come in, right? My 1 cent, which I have followed in my career so far, is what is the main reason behind the transition? Is the reason behind the transition faster learning, better learning, or those opportunities which I would ideally not get in my current organization or in my current role? Or the movement reason is only big money, right? See, big money is replicable. How many transitions will you do chasing big money? But suppose you are getting good money and you are getting great role, right? A good money with great role is a great combination, which happens very rarely. Even in the same organization, this happens very, very rarely. So my 1 cent to all of you is think about what are the capabilities you want to build, right? Jumping ships is relatively easy in this digital world, but will that jumping ship give you an advantage which nobody else is getting, right? When I was in the factory stint, it was very easy to leave a factory stint and join a corporate role in a cushy job in an air-conditioned office. That's what many of us aspired when we were going through the MBA course. But that's not what it is. If I would have done that, I would not have been the person I am now because of those difficult experiences in the factory. So there is certain confidence you bring on the table when you go through these tough challenges. So do not shortchange challenge with a transition just because of money.
Yes, another follow-up question for that. So I would like to know from the employer's perspective as to, let's say the employees are they are really intending to go for this transition, and as an employer or as future HR leader, how can I ensure the employee retention, or how can I impart this trust within the employees that there is growth prospect within the organization?
See, it cannot be answered just like this. You have to actually analyze the entire environment. You have to analyze the reasons for the M&A or the reasons for this thing. See, unlocking career is not because we want to benefit the employee. Unlocking career is because we want our internal talent to grow. We want internal talent to take up higher responsibilities and bigger challenges. So growing careers or providing a career path is not a win-lose situation. It is a win-win situation, right? Now, this is also sometimes, leading to extremes. Like I know of organizations where the career growth, people aspire to change careers within the first year. That I don't agree with. If you are saying that after completing 1 year, I want a new role, then in the second year, I want another role, then that's how I'm growing. That is not correct. Anywhere, the research says that anywhere between 1.5 to 2 years to 3 years is the right time that you need to spend in your current role to learn about the role. And in the second year onwards, you start contributing to the role. So when you are planning or strategy, and I have spoken about a lot of these things in my book also, that when you are planning for a career growth strategy, you need to plan it in such a way that both the employee and the organization, they benefit out of it. And it should not create a rat race amongst the employee. At the same time, it should not create in the minds of the employer that employees are never going to leave me because I pay the most. That is a part of our case study also, where, in our existing case study, the compensation is higher than the median. I'll talk more about it when we talk about the case study. Great, good question. Any more thoughts?
We being Gen Zs are quite active on social media, and there are various forums where we put out our thoughts like Quora and all, and this creates a very sometimes it creates a very negative impact of the company if there is information out there. So do companies need to have some clauses or policies to handle this situation?
A great point. There's a website called Glassdoor and LinkedIn also, and like you said, Quora and all. See, I'll tell you, at the base of it, right? Just like I'm saying, for mergers and acquisition happen because the base is to build capability, right? As a HR professional, you become a great professional not because of policies or structure or systems and processes. At the base of it, it is the connect which you establish with your fellow employees. Similarly, when we talk about, the base of the issue which you have raised, the base of it is free will. Now you cannot suppress free will, right? History has a lot of examples wherein whenever we had situations in which we are suppressing free will of people around us, it has only led to corrections, right? It could be with respect to kingdoms, it could be with respect to corporates, it could be with respect to individual leaders, it could be with respect to your own family. So free will cannot be suppressed for a long time. Everybody wants to express themselves, right? Everybody should have the right to share their thoughts, right? So, you cannot regulate free will by having policies, right? And suppose you say that, no, if people jump the policy, then you're going to sack them. Then once you sack them, what will you do if they again go to the media and keep on talking negative about your company or your people? Then you will say, no, we will sue them. Okay, if you sue them, the matter will go to the court. Then what will you do if in front of the judge he is speaking ill about the company? So you cannot suppress free will. What you should try to do, if suppose there is if there is an employee or a set of employee who had negative experiences or who are having negative approach towards a certain situation, as a HR professional, what you should do is try to be honest and try to balance between what is the right thing to do and what is the thing which is happening on the ground. That's the most you can do. You cannot suppress free will. It will come out in one way or the other. That's how I look at it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Any thoughts? Yes, Nupur.
Hello, sir. So thank you so much for such a great session, first of all. And sir, so my question is a little deviating from the topic of mergers and acquisition. So my question is basically on sales capability development. So what, according to you, is more important for the sales team, the functional skills or the behavioral skills?
Oh, you are asking a chicken and egg story. I mean, both are equally important. In fact, that's the reason why companies like PepsiCo, we have invested a lot into building leadership capabilities. So we have a full-time HR team focusing on talent management and leadership trainings. And then we have a separate vertical called sales capability. The work that I do is not about behavioral training. The work that I do is about building functional skills. If you don't have the right behavior, functional skills will not build up. If you don't have the functional skills, behavioral skills will dilute. Because see, if you don't know how to sell, then you will try to sell in whatever way you want. So that will dilute the ethics and that will dilute the right way of behaving with the customer. So you have to balance both of it. And that's the reason why good organizations focus on both these legs. It's just like, balancing on both legs. If you don't have a leg, how will you balance? Right?
Thank you, sir.
But having said it, try to understand that depending on the stages of the organization, the importance of this too can be a little bit tweaked, right? So if you are having a new organization, right, then you would want to set the behavior right. So you might focus a lot on the building the behavioral skills. But if you are having an organization where there is a lot of attrition and you are having new blood coming in, then training them quickly on the functional skills along with behavioral skills will be a little bit more important. So it's about balancing it, but equally tweaking it as per the right need of the hour.
Thank you, sir.
Great. So we just have 12 more minutes left. I will take a pause from the questions. Let me spend 5 minutes on the case and my thoughts around it. Then we can come back to the questioning for the remaining time. Great. So let me have a show of hands and let me quickly check from you who all have gone through the case studies. Can you just use the gesture button and share with us how many of you have gone through the simple 8 pages case study, right? 8 pages, if I'm not wrong. Very simple case study. It should not be that I am the only one or the creators are the only one. Can you raise your hands?
Not all of them are the participants, and there will be like I think 2 teams who have qualified from the campus for this.
How many teams?
The 2 teams, I think 2 or 3 teams.
2 or
from
3
the
teams.
campus.
Okay, great. So no worries about it. My recommendation is after your competition gets over, share this case with everyone so that they can relate to the mergers and acquisition topic. It's a very easy case. So there is a company called Mindbell, which started as a family business, right? And this analysis I've done to ensure that whoever has not gone through the case, they get to understand the case in an easy manner, right? So it started as a family business, single business focusing on low-cost automobile parts manufacturer. So they were, for automobile, you need a lot of parts. So they started as a low-cost automobile parts. They saw a lot of success. And then they expanded to customized parts, right? Which of course would give them a lot of margins. So that's how they transitioned. But what they did after that is something which is mind-boggling. And kudos to the management team and the founder as well as the founders' families. What they have done is they ventured out of automobile parts into pharmaceuticals and into space exploration, right? Reminds me of a great personality which is being talked about recently, and insurance and steel. So if you see, starting from an automobile parts manufacturer, they actually diversified and became a conglomerate over a period of time, right? Good strategy or bad strategy, let's talk about it later. But what this shows is there was an ambition to venture out and be in those areas which might be growing at that point in time. And 1970 to 2000, we have seen humongous growth in these domains, right? Pharmaceuticals, space exploration, insurance. Insurance, again, we are seeing a lot of transformation. In fact, I'm having a lot of my friends who are the founders and CEOs of quite a big insurance companies these days. And steel, right? So all these sectors, they saw huge growth from 1970s to 2000, 2010s, 2020s. And if you see, there is a simple timeline which I had made basis the case information, right from 1970 till 2018. 2 things which I've highlighted, which is relevant to the course is, after the success in automobile parts, they divested into acquiring Gelchem Industries, which was into chemicals and pharmaceuticals. And what they did was, after the acquisition, they acquired another company called Diadem Pharmaceutical. And our case study is about Foresight, which is actually known as Diadem in the past. So the name of Diadem was changed to Foresight in 2015, right? So both these companies, Gelchem and Diadem, they were related because it was part of a vertical integration, right? But what happened was, after acquisition in 2001 of Gelchem and 2005 of Diadem, they let go of Gelchem. The case is not clear whether they spun it off or that they had divested it. It only says that it was let go. Let go means, I'm assuming, it was sold to some other company. So in 2001, they acquired a company. In 2005, they acquired another company, which was supposed to be a vertical integration, this as a base. And then suddenly in 2014, they sold their base company. So case doesn't give more details on why that thing was done. But it is just like when you analyze it, you get to understand that, okay, you had one company, then you acquire another company as a vertical integration of the first company. And then some few years later, you sell off the base company. Then the question that arises is, then you should have sold the vertical integrated company also. But you did not sell that because that's a highly profitable company, highly profitable to your organization. Similarly, let's go into details of Diadem. Like I said, it started as a Diadem. As per the case study, it contributes 4% of revenue, but the greatest value add is they have very high margin products. So that is the reason why maybe you let go of the base company, which was Gelcam, but you retain the vertical integrated company, which was Diadem. So Diadem, again, it started in 2005 as an acquisition. It was a mid-sized 2 factories company. The focus was initially on generic drugs. So core competence was in generic drugs. They moved little bit higher than the core competence to merge both Gelcam and find capacity utilization for both Gelcam and Diadem. And then the core competency was changed from generic drugs to actually new product development. And they patented a new antipsychotic drug, which was not manufactured by pharmaceutical companies at that point in time. So effectively, the core competence, if you see, it was seeing a shift, or it was seeing a vertical integration, right? And that's where we talked about that what capability you want to build when you are doing the M&A. What are the capabilities you want to build? That should be the goal. That should be the key point as an HR when you are doing the analysis. Right, in the management structure also, you found that while Mindwell was having the techno-structural functions like HR and finance, but the operations was actually left free. So it was actually a free organization working within a bigger organization. And the chief scientific officer, Rima Shah, she was running the operations, and she was quite vocal and a very strong personality. And then you had the thing that you were actually paying higher than the median because you thought that tacit knowledge should not be lost and the learning curve should be flatter. So you should try to retain as many employees as possible. So that is why you were paying more than the industry. So these were some of the analysis for Diadem for pharmaceuticals. And then you move ahead, you also need to do a deep dive analysis. Unfortunately, the case doesn't talk more about it. So you have a CEO. I am assuming he is a male. Shiv Rana was the CHRO for the group Mindbell. His task was to take care of this M&A and spinning off of the foresight. Rima Shah, very strong personality as it comes across from the case. She was the CSO. She joined in 2008 and grew very fast. She had her own strengths about customer knowledge and P&L acumen, something which was important for the success of the organization. At the same time, she had standoffs and good or bad, I think mostly bad, that how it comes across when you read the text with the organization. And then you have employees of the foresight as the stakeholders. So what were the triggers of the change? Actually, the trigger was an external event of COVID. So COVID led to disruption in operations, and that would have impacted their factories, that would have impacted their customers. Automobile sector suffered massively because there was absolutely no transportation happening. So buying new cars, selling old cars was absolutely in a standstill for more than 1.5 years. If automobiles are not running on the road, then the automobile backend, the companies providing the spare parts and the rubber industries, tire industry would also suffer. So I am, while the case doesn't talk about it, but I am sure there was a compulsive case for the restructuring. So while the case study is that there was a restructuring happening, operation efficiency, but I think that their financials got impacted. The magnitude was not shared, but I think it would have been huge, and that would have caused an impact on their survival. So that is why I think the change was on the horizon. And the key changes which they were trying to do, again, the words which are used are big, like performance management, contingency, product repositioning, pricing strategy, redeployment. But if you see, all these are actually focused towards cost cutting and creating efficiencies. So all these words, pricing strategy, everything indicates towards the cost cutting strategy and not into increasing the revenues. Revenues cannot be increased because you are into the COVID scenario where automobiles are not selling. So you don't have control over the external environment. So what will you do? You will actually end up controlling the internal environment, which is cost cutting, right? And again, the easiest thing when people try to cut cost, first thing which I will tell you are the training cost. So, coming from that sales background, sales capability background, and you would hear it from your professors, first cost which is cut are the training cost. And then the next level costs are all the town hall, the G&A, and then it comes to the employment cost. So the solution which they were looking at to solve the proposed financial issue is actually spinning off foresight. So it will cater to the equity concerns, because I guess there would be other parts of the organization which would be having a cost associated with it, but they cannot let go of their core competency. So they can let go of those competencies which are not core, and that's where spinning off makes sense. And then separating entity on stock exchange, again thinking on what is the target for M&A, right? So they initially thought it should help cut cost. Then they are talking about the benefit from the stock exchange. Then they are talking about benefit from the employee policies, the 4 labor codes. They are also talking about the replication of management systems. The IT team was talking about that we cannot implement the IT systems in a standard manner across the entire group, right? And what the group, the chief scientific officer, Rima, is talking about is, she is concerned about high attrition, because like I said, M&A will lead to attrition, loss of freedom of management, higher control of group on the operations as well as compensation. Layoffs could be an outcome. Spin-off is definitely an outcome which they are talking about. Market reaction, increase in sharp prices could be an option. Labor codes, the external environment are changing. So these are some of the nuances of the case, and this is the last slide I have with respect to the case. It has got stuck. Just give me one moment, please. Yeah. So I would, those of you who have gone through the case or who would go through in future, look at what should be the answers to the question in terms of these 6 boxes. I am not providing you the answers, but you should make it yourself basis the discussions. So what is the Foresight's core competence? What is the group's core competence? What was the reason for the M&A, right? What are the future benefits for Mindbell and Foresight? What will be an impact on the conglomerate with respect to financials and external perspectives? What will be the impact on the Foresight's employees, the continuity on job, anticipated attrition, talent management, etc. And the most important thing which I was talking about is post-transition, what will you do as a HR head? Will you keep in touch, not keep in touch? Will you give them freedom to operate? Will you manage their cost? What will you do? So these are the 6 buckets you can think of if you are trying to solve this case as part of the case competition or as part of your learning. Finally, second last slide. So the number of M&A deals, they will keep on growing with number of years. US is the country which has had the highest number of M&As. India is slowly catching up with a lot of venture capitalists focusing on India, and the dollar value going up. There will be more money coming to India soon. That would lead to a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I am having friends who are founders of very big organizations, and they have been doing these things, and I had the opportunity of interacting with them as well. Why they are doing it, what's the thought behind it. So mergers and acquisitions are bound to grow as HR professionals. If you gain insight into it, if you build your competency into it, it will come handy. And just to summarize, so as HR, you will have a big role to play, whichever organization you are joining. Just be cautious. Separate your role from transactional analysis to strategic interventions. Don't get sucked into transactional operations. Balancing business versus people and balancing mind versus heart. And then the post-transition thing is the key success factor. Great. Thank you. Thank you to the entire team. Thank you to Professor Jatin Pandey for organizing and being the chair for Iiminence. Thank you to Nupur for coordinating with me for the last 3-4 weeks. Thanks to all of you for joining in, and thanks to the entire committee for putting all this thing together. I'm above, I've crossed my time limit, but in case you have any questions or if we have time for questions, we can do that. Over to you guys. Any questions? Any quick questions?
Sir, my question is on integration challenge. So when an old company which a bureaucratic culture acquire and merge in companies that is startup with autocracy culture, which have operational efficiency that gives it strategic advance due to its own human capital. So how integration must be handled so that it keeps up morale of people of both target company as well as the acquiring company.
Great point. See, the first thing is everybody in the company and the new company would know this. So it will not come as a surprise to them, right? So as a HR professional, if you know this, you need to have cultural immersion sessions to apprise what is the current behavior, what should be the target behavior or right behaviors in the future. That is the starting point. And of course, as and when the challenges come, you will need to remain agile and you will need to solve for them. This is the need of the hour. So there is no guidebook to this. It will be a trial and error method, but everything will depend on your approach towards whether you are open to learning or not, whether you are keeping your ears open or not, and whether you are able to convince your management or not in terms of all the HR initiatives you want to take, whether it is in terms of cultural immersion, trainings, compensation revision, career strategy revision, and all those things. So these are the few things which you can look into.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, about the Twitter deal that has just happened recently. So,
Yes.
I mean, most of us are very excited to see such an acquisition or merger. And at the same time, there are a few nuances like firing of the CFOs and CEOs. I mean, how should we derive learning from this? What is there to learn for us?
Great point. And to be honest, I mentioned this couple of times in my session. I was anticipating this question. And if you see my next slide as a backup slide, I had created this to talk about the Twitter deal. Right. And this is what I was giving you. I mean, this is an example of how, as a HR professional, you can anticipate what's going to happen. So for this session, I was anticipating this question. Right. Similarly, if you go through mergers and acquisition, you should anticipate what are the questions that might get asked and prepare for it. So nothing good or bad. I'm just saying that this you will get with experience, but be prepared for such questions in your real life also. So let me share with you the Twitter thing. See, again, there is first thing which I want to tell you, Prakhar, is I cannot comment on the Twitter deal at this point in time because of the sensitivity involved in it, right? And there are a lot of people going through a lot of emotions, good, bad, ugly. So it's best that we don't take a judgment, but it's just that let's see what does the media or what has the information come to us, all right? So again, in terms of mergers and acquisition, in terms of embrace and brace thing, my thing to you is think this Twitter deal in terms of what is the core competency or the core capability of the acquiring organization and the acquired organization, and where does it sync? Is there any sync at all, or is there no sync, or there is little sync, or is it only the ambition driving, right? Ambition and the thing that you want to foray into new business verticals, right? And the media says, right, that currently Twitter is under huge financial they are under financial pressure, and that financial pressure is giving them a reason why such drastic measures have to be taken with respect to employment of the employees. So there is a thing that they are losing 4 million per day, right? And generally in IT and ITES and the software companies, the highest cost is with respect to the manpower cost, right? So I don't know. I have not gone through the balance sheet of Twitter. What I have seen is they are saying that there is a 4 million loss per day. And that is the reason why one of the reasons why they have to take this drastic action. Again, I would want you to evaluate that what has been the change in vision of the previous owners and the new owner, right? The new owner talks about moderation policies, principle of free speech. And today, if you see, there is an external factor also involved, and there are eminent organizations which are keen in seeing how this deal goes through and how it goes post. I was talking about the post-integration or the post-transition, is the key success factor. So a lot of people are talking about it. And today, if you see in the news, the UN head has urged Elon Musk to ensure Twitter respects human rights. So I cannot comment or I cannot make a decision or what is good, bad or not. I'm just saying that these are the reports. We need to keenly look into how things goes and how this deal goes through. more from a HR practitioner's point of view to learn what could be the way forward in future if you want to handle these things. Right? And I will just relate this to the point which I had said earlier. It is not the change in labor codes or something which matters. What actually matters is how do you deal with your management and your employees on the changes you want to do, right? So the law can say something, but how do you change the legacy is something which is the practitioner's challenge. Okay. I hope I am able to confuse you even more with these thoughts.
No, sir. Whatever you said makes sense.
Yeah. Any thoughts? Any other questions, team? Please feel free to unmute anyone who has not spoken. You can also speak. I'm now presenting you the participants' view.
There are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, sir, the case talks about spin-off. What according to you can be some alternatives to it, like in general, if we want to avoid it or delay it? See, right now, even I am not able to come to a conclusive point on this, right? And that's where, we need more data. The case only talks about something which is a filtered view of the environment, right? Now, taking a call on such filtered view is not the right approach. You are not doing service as a good HR practitioner if you just get this data. To be honest, I wanted to create a slide on what are numbers saying, but I did not find any big numbers. I just found that the foresight is 4% of revenues, and there are 200 employees. This number is not enough for you to share what would be the future advantage of doing a spin-off or not. Right. It doesn't talk about what is the profit and loss of the state of the company in the last 2 years. Where are the financial pressures? Where are the people pressures? It doesn't talk about what is the view of management for the CSO. CSO comes across as a very strong personality. So does the management want to keep her? Don't want to keep her? Is she absolutely essential for the success? Not essential for the success? She appears to be resistant to change. So there are a lot of factors. I mean, there is a mix of both what the company wants to achieve and how you want to achieve it. So there is no clear-cut answer, and could be no alternative. The easiest alternative is continue as it is. But if you continue as it is and you are not able to sell your core competency products, which is manufacturing automobile parts, then survival will be a challenge. So even I don't know what is the right thing basis the information given. If I have more information, then I can probably have a balanced view of what could be the right way forward. And mostly in real life also, you will face this challenge. The important thing would be to actually measure both the pros and cons and then take a hit and trial method. So if you want to spin it off because there are more positives than negatives, spin it off. Maybe after 1 year, you think it is not working, then you again bring it back to your organization, right? So these are the things, which are part of daily life and difficult decisions to make. There is no clear-cut success thing that if you do this, you will be success 100%. That is not there. So as managers and as people leading the change, you will have to take a punt. And if you are wrong, be honest in saying that I was wrong. These are the key learnings, and this is how we want to make it right. Read about more of this. I have written a chapter in my book on how do you handle vague situations, right? So that chapter talks about some of the decision-making criteria, and it can give you more thoughts.
Thank you so much, sir, for putting across a rich learning content. It was really wonderful interacting with you, sir. I'm sure it gave us all another perspective to the real new world we are in now and will be in future. Thank you so much for sparing some time and joining us this afternoon. This marks an end for the session. Thank you everyone for joining and being a graceful audience. Everyone can drop off now.
Great. Thank you so much, Saundarya, for hosting this. Thank you, Nupur, and thank you everyone for being a great listener, as well as, some of your questions have really made me think as well. You can connect with me offline. You can message me on LinkedIn. I can share you my number. You can call me up. I'm absolutely available, not only to my internal employees anytime, but also to all of you after this session. Feel free to ping me.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Bye.